budget, so we'll get started. Dr. Gabriel will be joining us shortly. Go ahead and take the roll, Ms. Tanner, please.
Basine?
Here.
Buffalo?
Here.
Campson?
Here.
Clanton?
Present.
Jordan?
Here.
Martin?
Present. Okay. Let's see. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
Just make sure I'm clear on what we're doing. So the are we rediscussing the carry forward funds? We have received information from Attorney Cloud, and I hadn't heard back what our plans are as far as that's concerned.
The reason that we're having this meeting is because a couple of the board members wanted to extend the discussion. So I don't have a formal agenda on what we're discussing because I'm leaving it open to make sure that you have the opportunity to have your, to satisfy yourself for your vote.
Okay. Well, I mean, then I'll go through recommendations that I have, but I would also like for us before we end to have another discussion or update in regards to the vote that we took for the reversion funds in connection with the information that we received from Attorney Cloud.
I just want to, Madam Chair, if I can be clear. Yeah. We took a vote on the reversion funds. And so, if I'm not mistaken, that the administration's recommendations were adopted. And so, parliamentarily, and by those being adopted, unless there are members who voted in favor of the motion, it's not being brought up again, unless there's someone else who's going to bring it up. So I wouldn't say wasting time going down that road. My understanding is that we're a special call meeting to talk about the superintendent's proposed operating budget, and so that we can stay on that one, Madam Chair, just so we can get into the discussion. I like to move, because it has to be in a there needs to be a motion on the floor so we can have discussion. Move for the adoption of the proposed operating budget for fiscal 24 of proposed budget.
So, Madam, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate what my colleague, Mr. Clanton, has put on the floor. I think we have the opportunity to, we don't have to have a motion on the floor in order to have a discussion. But beyond that, what I was asking about in terms of the reversion funds, we received, I don't know if you all saw it or not, but we received some correspondence from Attorney Cloud in response to some questions that I had that would require us to make some corrections because what we potentially voted on needs to have some corrections to it as far as the reversion funds. So as I understood it, there were a couple of options that we could consider, and I was just trying to get an update.
So, Mr. Jordan,
as to
again, because it's a separate topic, it is not the operating budget. That would need to be brought up at a separate time, but we need to talk about the operating budget. I'm not disagreeing with you if there's something that we got to do, but this is a special call meeting with the only thing being the operating budget, and just so that we stay within accordance. That's all.
Well, if there's an opportunity to amend the agenda, then I would like to see us add that.
Legally, can we do that?
Then the call meeting would be over.
Well, let me address what Mr. Jordan's talking about. I sent the board an email on Monday to all board members notifying you that the resolution on the reversion funds had a typographical error in it. You voted to have those funds reappropriated to you for use in the fiscal 2023 year, this year. Mm-hmm. That obviously was a mistake because you already have had those funds appropriated to you. What you meant to vote on and what Mr. Jenkins meant to write was that it be appropriated for the fiscal year 2024. And I said in that email on Monday that I thought that that was a typographical error that could be fixed by the superintendent, and the revised motion could be addressed to Dr. Martin to sign as chair without any further discussion, or it could be brought back to the board for a vote on it again. So either way, the resolution needs to be corrected. The version that you voted on should not be presented to the council because it simply asks the council to reappropriate money for the fiscal 23 year, which is about to end. You want them to reappropriate the money, $9.8 million, for use in the fiscal 2024 year that'll start on July 1.
Yeah, so
I sent that thinking then that board members, if they had an objection to Dr. Martin simply signing a revised motion, a revised resolution, they would make it at that time. As far as I know, no objection's been made. So I don't know, Dr. Martin, have you already signed a amended resolution and sent it on?
I haven't, but I can, yeah.
Well, so again, I think as a typographical error, it could be done without further board vote or discussion, but it also could be done by holding another vote, which will presumably result in the same 4-3, because it's not a substantive change. It's simply the correcting an error.
yeah, and as the maker of the
Dr.
motion, I mean, it would have just simply been a friendly amendment in the respect that there is a typographical error. It does not change the will of what it was, which was to reappropriate. It's just when that money was supposed to be reappropriated. But again, we're supposed to be talking about, appreciate it, the budget, just so we can stay on with that one. But I don't have an objection with it, and I made the motion.
Go ahead, Ms.
I do
Christina.
object to it, so.
But you
And my
voted in-
understanding was that if it was not a unanimous vote the first time, that it should be brought back, which is why I didn't send it in an email objection, because I thought it was going to be brought back.
I never said anything like that. The fact that the vote was 4-3 or whatever it was is irrelevant. The majority approved that resolution, but there had a typo in it, and the typo needs to be corrected.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's
So-
a motion and a second on the floor, Dr. Martin, regarding approving the operating budget fiscal year 2024.
Okay, so, I mean, we're going to discuss that. Any questions or comments about the operating budget?
Who's the second?
It was Ms. Campson.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that. Okay.
As the maker of the motion, I'd like to speak first then. Madam Chair, I think, again, as I stated when I was virtual, there are a lot of great ideas that are here. But again, I think we've had a lot of discussion around it. We can always have more. I think that as we continue with the discussion about how do we continue to craft this budget in a way that meets the needs. But again, that for me, it always goes back to our governance training and everything we've had down there, and the respect that we have a superintendent and the educational leadership team. We've also received this letter from both of the principals associations, both elementary and secondary, stating their support for this budget. Just as much as we have teachers that are in the classrooms, staff members who are working and supporting, we also have to have those instructional leaders in each of those buildings. And if they're telling us that they're good with this, the individuals that we want, that the team that the superintendent puts together, that this is what they need in order to move the needle, to support our students, the education and the learning that's taking place in the classroom, I'm going to support that. Can we always advocate for more? Absolutely. We can continue to do that, but I don't think that not being in tandem with our administration, doing that, and the other individuals who were throughout this division in that conversation, people are going to have differences of opinion. And it's great to have that type of deliberative discussion and debate about where we can go. But I just want to reiterate in this respect from me that I think that we have a solid budget, and I think that we will continue to grow. That budget has been presented to us to be aligned with the strategic plan for which this board, again, has voted on. And I think that it sends a strong, clear message to the team here within MPS that we support the work that they're doing, and that we want to continue to see that there's going to be success, and that we hold the superintendent and their team accountable. If this is what you say that you put before us, and this is what you need to move the needle, then we have the opportunity to come back and reevaluate that and reassess that. So again, I would encourage and implore my colleagues to support this budget, to support the voices of those who are in our buildings throughout the division, that this is the budget that we should vote for this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Jordan?
So I do have some amendments that I'd like to continue to offer as I had in the last session, but before I put that for consideration, just wanted to respond to Mr. Clanton's comments. You know, I agree with the principles that he's articulated. He referenced governance training. It's been referenced before. As part of our governance training, we are reviewing and discussing the book, The Governance Core. And I just want to share a couple of things from that book. This is under fiduciary responsibility. And it says, the school board is responsible for the financial health of the district. The board is ultimately accountable, both to the state and the community, for the school district's financial solvency. Thus, the overall fiscal plan and the budget, as a reflection of the plan, is a crucial component of the board's responsibility. During times of extreme financial difficulty and frequent shortfalls in funding, resource allocation decisions can be extremely challenging. It is important to understand that if there is a financial crisis in a district, no matter the extenuating circumstances, it is the board that is held responsible. The district's budget is in reality a policy document equal to, if not important than, the district's strategic plan. It is the budget that drives resources. Lost my spot. It is the budget that provides resources, profoundly affect the actual implementation of district priority and strategic goals. Various plans and goals on paper mean little if resources are not allocated to accomplish them. And then it goes on. So I appreciate that. I think that as a board member that I would like to uphold that component where I think is the board's responsibility. I think the superintendent and her team have done an excellent job of putting together a budget proposal for us to consider. The amendments that I'm offering are building upon that recommendation with the intent of trying to provide prioritization for the board to consider, and also to provide some greater opportunity for us to achieve equity and excellence. And so, having said that, the first amendment that I would like to have the board to consider, based upon the motion that's on the floor, is to expand the Ignite program from one campus, which is Lindenwood, to additional campuses to be determined by the administration. My background for that is, if you look at the VDOE school quality profiles, MPS's use of provisionally licensed teachers exceeds the state by approximately 6 points for all schools and 4 points for high poverty schools, and is lower than the state by approximately 2 points for low poverty schools. Several schools appear to be consistently experiencing double-digit teacher vacancies year to year. As a matter of fact, maybe I should pause and see if I can get a second on my amendment before we go into a discussion.
Right quick, though.
I second.
I just want to make sure, well, I've stated the point of order. I need the opportunity to state that. We don't have a figure. We're talking about a budget. And I was waiting to hear that from Mr. Jordan in his motion. I think when I asked the question in the meeting, we had the budget presentation, it was about $180,000 to be able to expand that program. So if we're going to expand it, we don't know how many. We're talking about programs. We don't know how much. And so therefore, well, you asked for a second in your motion. It wasn't stated.
I
It's
said,
besieged.
No. I stated the point. You made the motion.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that there isn't a figure. We're talking about a budget. So something's got to come from somewhere else, or we're just asking for additional money. And so that's my clarity on that one.
Yeah, so to your point, so one of the, first I'll have the ruling of the chair on the first and the second, if I'm able to proceed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so as we talked about our budget process, and the reason that when we had our discussion, now I've lost track, I think March 1st, or maybe it was March 15th, March 1st, that then had the process for us to consider additional items for the board's potential action on March 15th. and then we scheduled this meeting for March 22nd. The reason that I did not put in my amendment, in my motion, so to speak, a specific number of locations is because I do think that that's something that the administration should determine. What I think the board has articulated in terms of priority, and as we have reviewed our monthly reports for some time, is we know that we have issues when it comes to vacancies. We know that we have discussed the potential of providing additional incentives, and I support the concepts that are articulated in the Ignite pilot. What I'm putting forward is for us to expand that. So in my write-up that I sent to you, I think that there are additional schools that we could consider. I understood the rationale that the administration used in choosing one school, but again, I think that in consideration of the resources that we have available to us now, and the research that we are seeing across the country, and priorities that are coming from everywhere from the federal government to the state government to school divisions across the Commonwealth. I've shared those things with the board as well. I think we have an opportunity to be a little bolder and a little greater. And so based upon our data and based upon our needs, I believe that we have the opportunity to do more than just one campus, Lindenwood. This is also our proposal to council. Ultimately, the final budget, the board will decide after we find out what council does and what the state does, and we make our final decision in May. I'm just simply suggesting that as we submit the board's proposal to city council, that that we do more than one, and so I'm recommending that, and would welcome any additional feedback from the administration as to whether or not, or any of the board members as to whether or not, A, there's support for that, and then B, what do we think we can do in this pilot? So we ran out of time last week, so I brought it back this week.
Ms. Campson and then Ms. Basine.
I strongly agree with Mr. Jordan wanting this program to be expanded and everything, because it's a very exciting sounding program. Looks like something that's going to be wonderful for children. However, I do caution you, and I've been here a long time. I'm not going to tell you how many years, but it's counted in decades, and seen many programs come and go. Really great, exciting programs, and the ones that we seem to have the shortest lifespan, or the ones where we put them all, so many of them all in together, rather than doing a pilot, which I assume that's what this is intended to be, so that we can iron out all of the wrinkles and the things that aren't working. They sound good. So many times things have sounded good that I've tried and they haven't turned out to be good. And give it that year as a pilot program to pick and choose what's working well, so that when we start putting a lot of money in, that we've already gotten away from any things that aren't working. We read a lot about programs, but every program doesn't work everywhere. So we've got a good school to go with this first one, and we treat it as the pilot program. That means they're going to get poured in a lot of extra help, which is, for this particular neighborhood and school, is a big plus for them to get all this and see it come. But I mean, we did year-round schools, and we pulled it in, and they only lasted the year-round got cut off because it kept having things people hadn't thought of. You know, when you're putting in a new program, you've got all these things and you're trying to make it perfect, but it turns out they don't all work. And so that's why you do a pilot program. So that would be my caution. I am 100% behind this. I'm excited that he has it up here for us. It's very forward moving, but we need to be careful because we're going to be spending a lot of money and we want something that works well. And this gives us an opportunity to work with children that really need the extra help, and at the same time be able to look and see what's working for us and what isn't, so that next year then we take that pilot program, and during the summer, here are all these teachers that are already trained in it, because you've got to get training to have it work. You can't just implement something that's not done. And so that would be my only suggestion here. Otherwise, I'm fully supporting the program and what Mr. Jordan's asked for, but I just say, let's not rush it. Let's give it that time. And I'm talking to you about someone's very experienced with this kind of thing.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ms. Campson. Go
You're
ahead,
welcome.
Ms. Basine.
Well, first of all, I wholeheartedly support this motion. I was actually very excited to hear about this program. Months ago, or actually all year and last year, as you heard me talk about my concern over the teacher vacancies, and just a couple months ago, I said, to the administration, like, let's be bold. I'll be right there standing with you, behind you, with anything innovative. And I said that, and you all heard me say that I'm standing there with you. And this is the exact kind of innovative program, that I'm talking about, the outside the box, creative kind of thinking, and this is it. And so I wholeheartedly support it. And I want to see it expanded. And to Ms. Campson's point is, right now, I feel like we've got nothing to lose, but we've already lost a lot. Our kids have lost a lot. That's what we've already lost. And that's what I'm worried about. The kids that we are talking about in our other schools have already lost a lot. And that's how we need to be thinking about this. So when we talk about funds for additional programming at our other schools, we need to think about those schools that for years and years and years that have already had the number of teacher vacancies that we've seen. We need to think about what they've already lost. And they have lost a lot. And we're seeing it in our data with the low literacy rates, with the low numeracy rates. They have lost, and we need to think about it that way. Time is of the essence. We don't have time to waste. I want to see this program expanded, and I can tell you right now where we can find the money, because we have the money. Through other funds. We can also look at some of the bonuses that we've put in place for new hires, because if we look at the raises, we could try to reallocate some of those funds toward these programs, which I think that goes directly to students, and that's the way we need to start thinking about these programs. Our kids have lost too much already, and we need to put the focus back into the classroom, and this is where it needs to go. So if you ask me, I support this. And we can talk about where to find the money.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Everyone's spoken about it, Madam Chair.
Not
don't
everyone
dis-
has spoken,
Yeah, I mean,
but
gone
who's
around.
volunteered, yeah.
I agree. I mean, we need to be bold. I support this program. It's that we're talking about Lindenwood Elementary School. I went out, very much support it. However, going back to the same thing that we just talked about in the governance training in the book that Mr. Jordan read, we as board members have a fiduciary responsibility. And my concern at this particular point is that I think that it's unfair to the administration that we have not figured out where we're going to pull this money from. We're saying, oh, we're going to send a budget. We have to send this budget to the city council by April 1st. I would expect from this board and from this administration that our superintendent, having clear direction from this board, clearly everything that we're asking for the money from. We also have to be good fiscal stewards to the taxpayers of the city. So if we're saying that there's $180,000, and that's what I asked for, that figure that came out with Lindenwood Elementary School, then we need to have how much is it going to cost and how many schools we're expanding it to. I mean, it's great to have a philosophical thing, but we're talking about a budget. This is different. We need to have hard numbers because it's got to come from somewhere. And I'm quite sure that the city manager and council is going to ask, okay, yeah, we want to do this, but how much are you asking for? So all I'm asking for me that's holding me back on this particular one, how many schools are we moving from? I mean, or that we're trying to target, and how much is it going to cost? That's all I would think that here at a budget discussion that we would have on the table so we can vote on it. I don't disagree against the concept, but we haven't done the due diligence, and we should have gotten that from the administration if we had had that conversation to come in here and say, this is what this would be, and this should be for consideration. That's my only concern, not the idea at all, because I'm wholeheartedly behind what we were trying to do at Lindenwood. But I agree with Ms. Camps in that respect. We don't just go all in. We've seen this. We did this 3 years ago in a similar program, hard to staff schools, and
It
we
wasn't,
didn't.
but
It was different.
respectfully, it was not the same. It wasn't with this
Exactly,
kind of
it wasn't
money.
the same,
It wasn't
and
with
now
this
the
kind of money.
administration's coming back with a different concept and
we
saying, hey,
didn't
we're
do
gonna
it long
focus.
enough.
We're gonna focus on
It's
this
not
one
the
school and
same.
come back with that. So that's my only concern that I'm putting out there to my colleagues.
Anyone else?
So, yeah, I think if we're going to do a pilot of any type, that just the science of it would recommend that you do more than one school. You know, I think Lindenwood is great. There are dynamics at one school, any one school, that could be very different than dynamics at another school. So to do an evaluation, I would think you need at least 3. But again, I think that when we look at the data that we've received monthly and what we've looked at over time, and even going back to the comments about 3 years ago, I think it was longer than that, that we did that. I can't remember exactly what's coming out of the state budget, but I'm pretty sure there was some funding in there for hard to staff schools, and I'm pretty sure it was just more than one. So all across the Commonwealth, especially as you look at the impact of the pandemic, and you look at the impact prior to the pandemic, it just so happens before I came to this meeting, I was listening to the state board that's meeting right now, and they were having some of these same conversations. So on the one hand, if I had put forward a recommendation that provided the exact number of schools, then it would be said that I was going below the line and directing the superintendent. I've had this out here now for, I don't know, almost 2 weeks. My hope is that I would get some feedback, and if the board decided to move in this direction, then the board could ask the administration to come back with an updated recommendation, as well as an updated, both in terms of number of schools and in terms of continuing to balance the budget, because there's all kinds of balancing budget strategies in here that may not add to the overall. What's the bottom line for me is, and I said this, it was mentioned earlier about the letter we got from the principals. So in conversations I've had with both teachers associations, and in the opportunity that I took with the principals when they sent their letter and said if anybody have any questions, and I asked them for their feedback, I said to all 3 of them, and I've said out in the community, that my personal priority is student excellence, and that teachers and principals and buildings and all the support systems and lunches and all that, to me, all those are inputs into helping to achieve the outcome, which is about student achievement, student excellence. And when I look at our data, both in terms of absences, vacancies, long-term subs, as I mentioned in my memo that's been out there, and I've asked anyone if they had any questions about it, pathways, we have pathways of schools where children start at elementary school and they have a disproportionate share of experiencing teacher vacancies or long-term subs or whatever the scenario is. They then go to middle schools with the same dynamic, and then they go to high school. So one possibility is take a feeder pattern, take a pathway. Do an elementary school, do a middle school, do a high school, where we know based upon our data that each of those schools in that pathway is experiencing vacancies and could benefit from incentives so that we could have stability. Because I tell you, the big number, the big cost that doesn't show up in any of our budgets is the cost to children who aren't reading on grade level, the cost to children who graduate from our school system not reading on grade level. When we look at our discipline reports, if you look at when we have an opportunity to see academic data, this is just a guesstimate, but I would guesstimate about 90% of those students aren't reading on grade level. So there's a significant cost on one side. And then some years ago, the Alliance for Education produced a calculation of benefits of what happens when students do graduate on time, ready to read with critical thinking skills and numeracy skills, the benefit that it has to us as a community. And so I would suggest to you that I'm open to a number. We can balance it however we want to balance it, but the cost of doing nothing, the cost of not doing more, I think is too great for our children and for our community, and thus that's why I put forward this recommendation for the board to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Anyone else? Okay.
Call the question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
May I just ask, what are we calling the question on right now?
The amendment.
The amendment, okay.
For the IGNITE program, expanding the IGNITE program.
Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Campson?
I feel like I'm not quite ready for this vote because if we're increasing the number of schools, we haven't decided on that. Are we doing 1 school, 2 schools, 10 schools? So I pass. Because I don't feel like I have the information unless we know. I would have been more comfortable with this had Mr. Jordan said, let's try 3 schools, rather than it's 2. Anyhow, I guess I'm passing because I don't know.
So that's nay? Or abstain? What are you doing?
She's just not ready. I guess if you say
Yeah.
you're not ready?
I guess, but I don't know how I'm going to get ready if what I need to know is how many schools I'm supposed to be voting on here.
We'll just come back
Go
around
ahead.
to her, I guess.
Give her, please.
Clanton?
No.
Gabriel?
Nay.
Jordan?
Aye.
Martin?
Nay.
Right back to me?
Campson?
Nay.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can revisit it later with
Yeah.
exact numbers. Okay.
Yes, we
Feel
will.
better about that.
Okay. Is there another resolution?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
And in light of the previous one, I think the overarching motion that's on the floor is adopting what's been recommended from the superintendent. I think if we make any, if we were to accept any of these recommendations, then we may end up with amendments to the overarching motion. But next one, let me get back to
Just for
today's
clarity,
special meeting?
Any amendments that you're putting forth, Mr. Jordan, are amendments to the motion. That's what
Pardon
we're
me?
talking about. Any amendments that you're putting forth are amendments to the motion. that I
Yes,
made.
correct. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Let's see. Wanted to do that one first. Let's do the series of amendments dealing with compensation. So what I have put forward for the board to consider is a series of motions dealing with our goals around being competitive in the marketplace. This first one I'm bringing forward is to adjust the what I'm calling teacher instructional personnel to a one-year credible teaching experience, to one-step philosophy for the board to adopt that. And I shared some of this before, but I'll just share it again. So in the strategic plan, we recommend that one of our goals is to be competitive, and that we want to.
Jordan, I don't want to interrupt you. Did we get a second on his amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
A second.
Okay.
Thanks, Mrs. Seen.
That we be competitive in the marketplace. And when we received the presentation from the administration on recommendations associated with the budget or rationale behind the budget, one of the very important matters that I really appreciated Dr. Birdsong and her team pointing out was Norfolk was, we were kind of ahead of the game in terms of our receiving the superintendent's recommendation discussion that we were having about the budget at that time, and that we knew that it was possible that other school divisions may also be having discussions at the same time, and so that actions that other divisions may have taken or could take could then have impact on where we ranked in terms of competitiveness in the marketplace. So in this particular case, you all know I just search things all the time, and so I actually was just trying to look through board docs and through on the web to find out what actions other school divisions may have taken or were considering taking as related to compensation. And in that search, I came across a work session that the Virginia Beach School Board had in December of 2022, where they had they were looking at their competitiveness in the marketplace. And in this presentation, they had the company Siegel presenting to the board and the superintendent findings that Virginia Beach had done as part of their compensation. Well, one of the goals that Virginia Beach had was, as I included in this memo that you all have, is they wanted to be more competitive than Chesapeake. They saw Chesapeake as their, I guess, primary competition. And then in March, I think it was March 7th, one Tuesday this month, their board had a call meeting just like this one, and they voted to increase their compensation. So we have heard, and we all look at our personnel dockets, and we even added on some of the dockets that we look at, wanting to know whether or not employees were leaving Norfolk and going to other districts. So for years, I've heard during my tenure on the board that many of our employees would leave Norfolk, go to Virginia Beach, get on a step that they think they should be on. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't, but when they come back, they now feel like they're on their right step. And so we've known since we did our Siegel Water study in 2016, I think it was 2016, that Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, Suffolk, and Virginia Beach all have a one year of credible experience, one step philosophy. And so what I'm bringing forward to you is that in addition to what has been brought forward by the administration, that the board adopt or recommend, support, that we go into that same philosophy so that we can truly make sure that we are competitive not only when it comes to beginning salaries and other things that have been referenced in the presentation. But over time, because if our surrounding districts and our competitors are offering the 1 year of credible service to One Step as part of their compensation package, and we are not, then in essence, we are not on the same playing field. I think I said at the last meeting, you know, we're both shooting behind the arc on the basketball court, but some districts are rewarding 3 points and we're rewarding 2 points. But because both shots are being made beyond the arc, we say that we're doing the same thing. So what I'm recommending, again, and if you may recall, I thought this is what we were doing when we first brought forward the compensation adjustments and dealing with the steps, that we adopt this 1 year credible service for and equals One Step. And I think that then would truly put our teachers in a place of competitiveness, in addition to benefits and advantages that I think the Norfolk Public Schools package already offers, but also would reward our employees, especially our veteran employees, for the time that they stayed with us and when they weren't getting compensated in that way in terms of STEP. I think that would help us to address any future compression or avoid future compression. And frankly, I think that I don't think working in Norfolk is for everybody. And I think it takes a special love when you look at some of the unique opportunities that we offer. And so I think going back to what I said earlier in terms of student excellence, if what we say is having a highly effective, highly qualified teacher in the classroom who loves our children is one of the most important factors to advance student achievement. And if having support employees in that same dynamic and having principals in that same dynamic, then to me, there's no better policy or budget decision that we could address that deals with staffing than to adopt this formula and philosophy so that we can attract and retain and frankly save millions of dollars in not having to retrain people that we lose, which turnover is a detriment to student outcomes. And so I bring this forward for the board to consider all of those factors as part of this recommendation.
Dr. Martin.
Go ahead, Mr. Clayton.
I don't disagree with Mr. Jordan in respect of making sure that we compensate our staff members. But when you look at this, my concern, again, looking at this, is, again, comparing apples to oranges. We already know that traditionally, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, a lot of these other school divisions start off with higher wages to attract and bring individuals in. But as the years go by, those wages typically decline. And it has been a tradition with Norfolk Public Schools has been, you may start off a little bit lower, but with longevity, those numbers will go up. Now, I know that we've been looking at compression. The administration brought a plan before us to deal with compression, and we voted on that. I honestly was thinking that I was going to hear from you today. I think I heard $5 million is what it was going to cost to deal with compression in 1 year. That's the type of thing when we're talking about a budget that I would have probably, again, gotten behind. Let's say we do this and we get this done in one time. Again, this is uprooting the entire budget that we have in front of us. I mean, how is the administration to go in there and give a dollar figure on this? And so this really gets me into this thing. I agree with, yeah, we need to continue to look at that. How do we get to a one-to-one? But at this particular point in time, without a real figure around that, it again leaves that very gray area. And so really with that, I want us to continue this discussion. I don't think that we're ready to make an adjustment to this budget here today. And so with that, I'd like to make a motion to commit this and refer it to the administration for more study and discussion throughout the year.
Martin.
Yes.
Is there a second? There's a second.
Wait a minute.
I have a comment.
It's an incidental motion.
We need,
I motion to confer, so we need to vote on the motion that I just placed forward to
and
commit
you
it to
can
the
have comment.
administration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyone
So I
second?
just want to make sure I understand. What's the ruling of the chair?
What's up?
I want to make sure I'm clear on what is the ruling of the chair.
He wants to hear it from you.
That we need a second in order to go into discussion
On what?
on the,
Motion to
the
commit. to
motion
refer.
to commit, but we need more information before voting upon.
So just for clarity, so you're accepting the motion in the second? and
For
now-
discussion.
And now we are what, discussing?
There is no discussion on it. It's either a vote up. do we
I'm
have to
asking the
send it-
chair.
Well, I'm sorry, I would
I'm
like
just trying to
a
help
little
you.
more
It's
discussion to understand. So motion second, so that we can, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board if if there is a desire to have more discussion at another time about this topic before I vote on whether or not to accept having it discussed at another time.
So I just want to make, so you're, what are you, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because if you're, we were in the middle of something, and I just want to make sure I'm clear where you're saying we're going next.
I'm asking you all, would you like to have this discussion on moving to a one-to-one policy so we could direct the administration to prepare that presentation so that we can see what that entails? So a timeline as well as money committed to it.
You're saying have it now?
No, I'm saying at a future date.
So are you,
That's the motion I put on the floor. It's an
Stop.
incidental motion. It's been seconded.
I'm-
There is no discussion.
Oh.
We should move to a vote, yea or nay on my motion to confer.
I'm
That's all.
asking the chair. I thought I heard the chair said she wanted to hear feedback.
And I'm
so-
calling a point of order. There is no discussion on an incidental motion to confer or commit. It is a vote, yea or nay, and if
Okay,
not, then we go back to the
That's fine,
amendment.
we can move
That's all.
on. So that will give me the answer I'm
Yeah,
looking for. So yes,
exactly.
I understand that.
That's all.
Okay, so Ms. Tanner, please, do you want to repeat what
So
you
in other
said?
words, I'm asking that we take Mr. Jordan's amendment, this proposal here.
Ms. Tanner
and
didn't
send-
hear who seconded it. Could you
That was-
tell her?
It was Dr. Gabriel.
Okay, thank you.
So can I have?
So it's a motion to confer it to the administration for additional discussion. It's either a yea or nay. If it doesn't pass, then we're back to
We're
your
back to your
amendment.
discussion, yeah.
Basic parliamentary procedure.
Ms. Tanner?
You ready? Okay. Basine?
Nay.
Buffalo?
Nay.
Hampson?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Nay.
Martin?
Aye. So I had already had this listed as a topic for future agenda, for future agendas, so that we can have it.
High on the
a-
future.
Yes.
Dr.
So we can have a formal presentation, have opportunity to vet the monies that will be required and the timeline for getting all of our employees on the one-to-one step process. And then obviously we'll have to have a policy around that as well.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Ms. Basine and then Ms. Buffalo.
I am extremely, extremely disappointed in this discussion. We had this discussion last year.
Well,
A point of order in the room,
Last year,
please.
we had, I am going to speak right now because we had this discussion last year, the year before. We keep continuing to table this very important discussion while our students sit in classrooms without teachers sitting in front of them while they continue to not be able, the reason why our literacy scores are low while our numeracy scores are low is because of us, because of the behavior that we are exhibiting right here, right now, at this moment. We cannot make a decision. We cannot have a discussion. It is because of us.
I am not in
This-
that category.
No,
This-
because
I
I
am
didn't
not
vote
in
to
that
give it leadership.
category.
I am
very
speaking
comfortable making a
right
decision.
now.
Okay,
I
just
am
please,
speaking right
everyone,
now.
just
I
wait
do
your
not
turn.
want it, this discussion should not be tabled. It is a very critical discussion. It is a critical discussion. And I cannot believe that we are, again, tabling it. That's all I got to say. I want it on record that I'm disappointed and with this board.
Yeah, I truly believe that to be fiscally responsible, we need to know how much money and
Very
the
irresponsible.
timeline that's
It's
required to
educational
get to a
malpractice for our
one-to-one.
students to be without teachers in the classroom.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Gabriel, and,
Oh,
I'm
sure,
sorry,
I
Ms.
was
Buffalo,
next.
and then Dr. Gabriel.
I'll just say this. First, I would like for us to be respectful and kind to one another. That's the first thing. Secondly, March 12th, 2022, I can recall this board having this same discussion, and around this table, you go back and watch the meeting, you all committed to have this conversation for this time, so we wouldn't be in this situation this year, as I recall. And so it is disheartening to be a whole year later, in 2023, and still there's no solution to this issue. This was last year, March 12th, 2022. This board had the same discussion, and I heard several board members said their commitment to this issue. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch it. And here we are, March 2023, still talking about the same thing. It is disappointing. We had a whole year. As I said last week, budget discussions are continuous. They don't start in December. They don't start in October. They're continuous. This conversation, when you walked out of that board meeting last year, there should have been talks about how to get this done for this year. It's ongoing, ongoing. So yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed to my core, because again, as I've said before, as a product of this compression, in 2014, it's 2023, and we're still having these conversations about compression. It makes no sense. Make it make sense. To my core, I'm disappointed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Buffalo. Go ahead, Dr. Gabriel.
As we continue this discussion in collaboration with the educational planning, I think that we'll be able to fully grasp the ongoing reoccurring expenses that we can save and then apply that to a policy such as the one-to-one. And I think that would be the more prudent, methodical way to address this item, which we did have the discussion in March, and we actually accelerated the step compression resolution. That is the resolve of what happened last year. And are we on a one-to-one? No. But in the process, we've voted on a strategic plan. We've given the superintendent set goals, and we are continuing progress. My recollection is that, yes, we've come out of the pandemic, and our scores, albeit very concerning, all of us are concerned, but they have accelerated faster than the rate of the state. So we have a lot of strong work to do together, and I do think that this topic will be a great one for ongoing, especially as we balance our educational planning with our funds. Remember, 80% of our budget comes from the state, and so we also have a lot of work to do with our state colleagues in order to increase funding in general for all of our teachers, not just the SOQ positions.
Thank
Madam-
you, Dr. Gabriel.
Madam Chair?
Gabriel? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Jordan.
I have another recommendation. This one follows the same model that we adopt a one step plus 1 year for every 3 years of instructional experience for our administrators. This would deal with, well, let me be more specific, with our principals and assistant principals. As I mentioned earlier or moments ago with the teachers, what I think I have finally figured out the Virginia Beach model in terms of how they are compensating their principals and assistant principals, and why it may have long been the case that we would see individuals leave Norfolk and go to Virginia Beach, is when they are calculating how to put their principals and assistant principals on the administrative step, they are calculating years of service as a teacher, and then they are using that as part of their calculation when they determine how to place principals and assistant principals on their appropriate steps in Virginia Beach. So I provided a similar background for this. I shared with you all at the last meeting. If you look through the examples that I used as best that I could, I looked at every one of our high school principals, had some elementary school principals, specialty principals, and others. And if you look at the chart of examples that I provided, oh, I'm sorry, I guess I need to get a second before I go forward. So,
Second.
you accept that, Madam Chair?
Yes, I do.
Okay. That when you look at the examples that I provided, in some cases, just using the example of our high school principals, looking at what I could tell from the data and information that we received from Mr. Billups, and then what I could tell from being able to look at resumes, and then looking at where Virginia Beach where our principals would be if they were under the Virginia Beach formula, that one of our high school principals would be -5 in terms of step deficit from Norfolk to Virginia Beach, Norfolk being on step 18, Virginia Beach being on step 23. Another principal being on step 8 in Norfolk would be on step 18 if they were in Virginia Beach. Another would on step 11 in Norfolk would be on step 19 if they were in Virginia Beach. Another would be on step 11 versus step 18 if they were in Virginia Beach. Another is on step 6 in Norfolk, but they would be on step 15 in Virginia Beach. Had an elementary school principal in Norfolk. They're on step 12. If they're in Virginia Beach, I calculate they would be on step 20. Another elementary school principal, they're on step 10 in Norfolk. They would be on step 13 if they're in Virginia Beach. Another principal would be on step 12, and I calculate would be on step 14. There's another I think would be the same, step 18, and then there's actually one that I calculated that in Norfolk they are would be 6 years ahead of Virginia Beach. And as we have the conversation, we knew in 2016 from the Sequel Water study how much it would cost for us to have administrators, teachers, and others on their correct step if they had this similar type of approach. And so you all may remember the discussion from last year and probably the year before, because it was I who would ask at every budget meeting, how are we progressing towards, which was once our 4-year phase-in, towards addressing compression. And so it was from that conversation that we learned, that this board learned, that we weren't going in that direction, which then resulted in the new compression study that was done and the recommendations and the discussions that we had last year. So again, I am stating that we knew about this in 2016. We knew about it, what's the beeping?
It was just my watch.
Oh, okay. We knew about it in 2016. We knew about it last year. To me, I know we've adopted and we did one phase-in of the new compression model, where I think we're doing certain things prior to 2016 and other things after 2016. From what I'm looking at in the data that I've seen, even with that, there's no indication that it's going to result in somebody making up 10 steps, 8 steps, and so forth. And it doesn't necessarily mean that going forward that what our employees lost from being compressed, that there's ever any real opportunity to make that up. So I put this forward, you know, kind of going back to what we just did on the previous motion. In my experience, what often happens is we do have discussions like this. We do agree as a board to take action in the future. And then it never gets on an agenda for us to have a discussion. And so to me, to Ms. Buffalo's point, I do think the budget discussion is a year-round thing. When we had our December public hearing, you know, could have been a great time to discuss some of these things. But I think that we have an opportunity right now to address this. And if we follow the pattern that we saw, at least for those of us that recall it, when we went through the Great Recession and we had some funding, and then we ended up not doing anything, which caused some of the compression to occur and folks not get steps. I see us in that same potential pattern now with resources that we have available to us to address these issues. And there's no guarantee that we're going to have those resources available for us moving forward. But that's
Can I ask what resources you're referring to, please?
well, there are the resources in terms of revenues that we receive from the state, the federal government, and local government that results in us having the large fund balances. So if you look at fund balances over the last 10 years, I went back and looked at our CAFR document. And in the CAFR document, it shows what our fund balances, unexpended fund balances have been over the last several years. You know, sometimes it's been very small. It's averaged around, it may have been less than $3 million, but when you get to 19, 20, and 21, it jumps. So it jumped in 19, I think, because we went a year without addressing the fund balance. So you had 2 years of fund balance, and that was $11 million. Then we went into the pandemic, so it jumped into the 20 millions. Then it jumped to 28 million. And so I was explaining, or trying to explain it in the last meeting, I think it was, that as a result of us, you know, vacancies, which we talked about earlier, under compensation, those things contribute to us having these large fund balances. So if, for example, this year we were to, going back to Mr. Clanton's point earlier, let's say that we had done the $5 million, then next year's fund balance is not going to be $20 million unless some other things occurred, because we would have taken money that was originally intended to deal with personnel, appropriately addressed personnel, so that we would have, you know, we wouldn't have those funds then end up being in fund balances that then restrict us to one year considerations. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's part of our structural balancing and right sizing and commitments and compensation that the board, in its fiduciary responsibility, does have the opportunity, I believe, to go deeper in terms of our competitiveness from the funds that we are requesting from council. And if for some reason we believe that through the funding formula that we have, if we believe that we are asking for more than what we believe we have available, then the funding formula also provides a mechanism for the board to ask for the compensation and also make recommendations to the city council on actions that we think the council could take in terms of trying to make sure that we compensate competitively for the benefit of our children.
Madam Chair.
Dr. Gabriel, did you have your hand up?
No,
I'm
I'm ready to
just-
call the
Well,
question.
we're at 5:06. It said that we would adjourn at 5 o'clock today. We've exhausted our time unless the board moves to extend additional time for discussion. So I'd like to say that we need to just call the question on Mr. Jordan's amendment.
First, I'd
And-
like to ask for any questions for him.
I don't have any questions. I think the Principals Association, who this is dealing with, has stated enough to us that they like to continue this conversation. I think that also we've talked about with the educational planning, has already presented several options to us that we would need to have full board discussion on that will yield those types of savings so we can redirect those dollars. I think that we're going to have to figure out exactly where we want to go and what we're going to do. And I think some of that showed that we could close 10 schools, 2 middle schools, or even a high school, to be able to right size what we have. We have declining student enrollment. So there's going to yield opportunities for us to do it the right way, intentionally, with intent and looking at the information. So again, like I said, we're over the time in that one. I'm just asking that we, unless we're going to extend debate, which I'm not in favor of, that we just call the question on the amendment and on the actual motion.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Jordan on his amendment? Resolution, sorry. Okay. Ms. Tanner, go ahead and call the question.
Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Campson?
No.
Clanton?
Nay.
Gabriel?
Nay.
Jordan?
Aye.
Martin?
Nay. I just want to say that I do have a long list of items that will be appearing on our agenda, including the items discussed today. All right, with that, meeting adjourned.
No.
No,
wait,
we're gonna
Madam Chair,
vote
we're at
on
regular
the
motion.
budget.
On the full budget.
voting
Oh,
on the
sorry,
budget.
Call the
Need
question
to vote on the full budget.
I have a,
Can
I
I
have
get a
a,
motion to adopt the?
Yes,
already there.
It's already there.
Okay,
Call
I
the
remember
question.
saying that, so okay, I'm a little, go ahead.
It's been a long day.
It is a long week.
Can I request that when the motion for the budget, can you repeat it? I think, Carlos, you
Yes.
had the original motion.
Yes.
Did you state the amount, or you just said?
The proposed,
the
it's already
proposed,
been publicly presented, and it's the proposed fiscal 2024 operating budget.
Okay. Basine?
I have a discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think we've exhausted discussion. Unless we move to extend debate, we have exhausted discussion, and we're now at the vote.
So is that,
Discussion.
may I have,
We're at the vote.
Do you want to move
Clarity.
to, do you want to move to extend the debate?
I move to extend debate.
I didn't know that we had limited it.
You
The
want a
agenda says
second?
5 o'clock.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
if you're
didn't
at
interrupt
5.
you because I wanted you to finish your statement on it, and you went about 5 more minutes over that. So I didn't interrupt you, but it
Want to second it
says 5 o'clock.
for Jordan?
Oh, okay. I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on extending the debate? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Campson?
This is for extending the
Extending the debate
debate.
and staying here longer.
Nay.
Clanton?
Nay.
Gabriel?
Nay.
Jordan?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
How
Please
long
keep
are
it
we
brief.
extending this till?
What's that?
How long are we
Okay,
extending
good.
till?
For another 5 minutes.
What?
5
5
minutes.
minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay.
People have places to be. I'm sorry, we did say 5 o'clock, so I'll give you, we can have it for another 5 minutes.
Okay, so can I just ask one quick question?
So
in the-
timer
in the
for 5 minutes, just like we do with our speakers. I'm sorry, it's 5 o'clock.
I got it, I got it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buffalo.
Go ahead.
I just want some clarity. So at the last meeting, I think we had a resolution. Is that what we're voting on? Or I think we had a series of resolutions, and if you recall,
We voted on those resolutions, and then there was just to adopt the proposed budget for which the administration has already given us a book and it's been published.
so we're not voting on the proposed resolution.
We've already voted on the resolutions. Those are the resolutions that you talked to Attorney Cloud about earlier.
No,
The reversion funds.
Related
No.
to the budget.
there's a resolution associated with the budget.
We're adopting the resolution from the administration and their proposal for the fiscal 2024 year budget.
So you're amending your motion? Because that's not what you moved?
I move for the adoption of the budget, which
Right.
is coming from the administration to this board. There's a
I just want to be clear because
Madam Clerk,
we-
is there a
we-
specific resolution?
Yeah, there is, because if you recall, we voted on one resolution that had,
We voted on the reversion
yeah,
funds.
typos in it, so I just want to make sure, are we
Oh,
voting on?
no, we're not voting on that one. I'm just,
No, no,
I'm
you're
going to
not.
sign
Y'all
for
aren't-
the
Y'all aren't listening to me.
correction.
Y'all aren't listening
Okay.
to me.
Do the budget.
As part of the recommendation that we received, there is a resolution that came from the administration for the board to adopt. I'm simply asking, is this motion on that resolution, or is it something different? That's all. I just want to make sure we're in order.
As the maker of the motion, it is on the resolution, which is adopting the budget.
Okay, any more discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
related to the budget, right? So I believe the school board's budget is the most important policy positions of the school board. It's a policy position that reflects the full needs of the district and our students' needs. I don't feel like the budget fully reflects the full needs as I see it. And mainly because I don't feel that the board has taken the time to establish our board goals and priorities. The board goals and priorities that I see through the data that I have observed and studied throughout the year, I have come to my own priorities that I see, and those are around student achievement, with an intentional focus on our students with disabilities, our ELL students, and our Black and Hispanic students. So what does that mean in terms of budget? I would have liked to have seen additional paras, additional focus on stipends for our hard-to-staff schools, our hard-to-staff content areas, for our special ed inclusion teachers, intentional focus on hiring bilingual and multilingual tutors and teachers. I would like a focus on compensation. We already talked about that and how I feel about that. And most importantly, perhaps, is supportive and caring learning environments on mental health and behavioral supports. We hardly moved the needle on that in terms of allocation, and I think I made it clear in some of the email correspondence in previous meetings when I asked for, the supportive position, this assigned support positions chart, and why I needed that, because I wanted to see how we stood up over the years. And there's been very little change over the years around some of our support positions. And I don't see how we're supporting our students if those allocations aren't changing very much, especially around mental health and behavioral health. How are we keeping our students in school? How are we addressing chronic absenteeism if those support positions are not in place? I'm deeply concerned about the mental and behavioral health of our students. I'm also deeply concerned about our alternative education programming and want to see a review of that programming, and I don't see where that budget addresses that either. So I'm not going to be very long. I know others probably want to talk, but at this time I can't support the budget at this time. I don't feel like it addresses our students' needs the way that I expect to see it support our students' needs, so I'm not going to be voting in support of the budget.
Could I say something real quick before it bangs?
Yep, you got a few seconds.
Would you please list all of the things that were added for mental health? if you can get them all in this.
At this time, I'm not asking for a rebuttal.
Well,
on
I
what
am.
I've-
I'm asking for
You
it.
can't speak.
If you do it real quick, if you can.
Okay, just right off the top of my head, I know this administration has been very intentional about adding additional positions for the social emotional well-being of our children. For starters, we started with developing a Department of Student Wellness under the direction of Dr. Moore. That was one thing that we did. We established that office. That took budgetary support. In addition to that, just recently, last year, I added 5 school psychologists to the budget, 5 school social workers to the budget. I also added before it and after school support programs for children just around social emotional learning. I asked for the support of a psychologist internship program. I also added 5 additional behavioral specialists. I mean, those are just a few of the things, so we certainly have been focused on student wellness.
Thank you, and I just wanted to make sure everyone heard the things that actually happened, because we didn't sit here and do nothing, like it's
And
been-
again, there are others, but off the
I
top of
know,
my
but,
head.
and I know we ran past the clock, so thank you for doing that, but I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of the many things that we're already doing about mental and social concerns. Thank you.
And wellness champions at each
Yeah,
school.
I know,
Okay.
that's great.
Dr. Martin, I just want to make sure on my motion that it's what's clear on what I made. What's included in that motion is approving the superintendent's proposed educational plan and budget for fiscal 23-24, and that includes a general fund of $401.3 million, school nutrition fund of $24 million, grants and special projects fund of $42.6 million, the total operating grants and special projects of $42.6 million, total operating funds of $467.9 million, capital project fund of $26.9 million, and a total operating capital funds of $494.8 million. That's what we're voting on.
We voted on.
No, that's what we're going to vote on
do
now.
that now.
Get ready to do.
Yes, please.
Ready?
Ready?
Ready.
All right.
Basine,
Nay.
Buffalo.
I'll just say this. I want to and think we need to continue to have budget discussions. I vote aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Nay.
Martin.
Aye. And Miss Buffalo, you'll be right there next to me, building that budget, so, or building the
Holding her
agenda, building that
accountable.
agenda. Yes, we're going to do that.
So are we.
Madam Chair, does the motion pass?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, with that, adjourn. Thank you, everyone.